You know, just when we thought that we were going to get justice for more than 200 individuals who were scammed by SSL, including our own national treasure, Usain Bolt. And it's been over 2 years now since the Jamaican people been asking a very serious question. When will somebody pay the price? When will the big people, in this case, face the reality? For a minute we thought that Gian Pantan was going to be the only person who would face the music. But that reality changed, and it changed in a very unexpected way. Let's talk about it. If this is your first time, welcome to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button, subscribe, and let's do this. So Stocks and Security Limited, SSL, is a Jamaican investment firm that collapsed following the discovery of a multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal in early 2023. And as of early 2026, the company is in receivership, and several high-level executives have been charged. So right after the Christmas, December 27, 2025, Mocha teamed up with the Financial Investigation Division and CTAX to conduct a high-field raid at 4 different locations. Now, at this stage, everything changed. The conversation, everything shifted. When police carried out a coordinated raid at 4 resident locations, seized documents and electronic devices, and formally charged 3 former senior executives, it marked a decisive turn in the investigation. Think about it. Raids of this nature are only executed when investigators believe there is evidence that supports criminal charges, especially when you are going at big necks. Because remember now, despite the government, we're dealing with a private entity, and they have the money or the kind of bag we can really sue people. You don't want them people to sue the government. In other words, this case has moved beyond suspicion and into prosecution territory. So by now you should know that the 3 individuals charged are Hugh Kroksky, the founder of Stocks and Security Limited, Zachary Hardins, the former Chief Executive Officer, and Sarah Meany, a former senior executive and branch manager. These were not peripheral figures within the organization. These were people at the very top of the company's structure. Individuals with senior authority, access, and oversight responsibilities. Their arrests represent a major development, particularly when viewed in the context of how this case initially unfolded. When the SSL scandal first became public, much of the focus was placed on Gian Pantan, right? A former employee, just a regular employee who was charged early in the investigation. At the time, she was presented as the central figure in the alleged fraud. Public perception was shaped around the idea that this was largely the work of one individual acting improperly. Meanwhile, senior leadership at the SSL largely denied wrongdoing, distanced themselves from responsibility, or were publicly overlooked in the earlier stage. This is an important point to pause on. In any regulated financial institution, especially one managing billions of dollars in clients' assets, it is highly unlikely that large-scale financial irregularities could occur without either the knowledge, approval, or failure of oversight by senior executives. Almost impossible. Over time, that reality became harder to ignore. Investigators continued to review documents, transaction histories, internal control and approval structures, stuff like that. And now, the focus widened beyond one employee to include those who are responsible for governing the institution itself. What this is telling us, these are signs of a case that has evolved. The case that has standstill as what most people thought. I did a video back then, about a year and a half ago, and I said, if it was just Usain Bolt, they would have wrapped up this case a long time, especially when them bring in foreign people. FBI, they would have wrapped this up a long time. But we are dealing with hundreds of people, billions of dollars, and not just that. We do not know how far did they go back. Now remember, the more they review stuff, is the more stuff I'm going to reveal, and it will even push them for suing. They were actually doing real work. And then these people never did even have a license, which is very curious to me, how the government invests so much money into a company that do not have a license. That don't make no sense. The charges now facing the former executive, including allegations related to fraudulent in document breaches of securities regulation and failure of fraudulent duty. In plain terms, fraudulent in document refers to a situation where investors may have been encouraged to place funds with SSL based on, representations that were misleading or incomplete. It's critical to understand that these charges do not require prosecution to prove that each executive personally removed money from clients' accounts. Financial crime law also focus, on responsibility, oversight, and control. If the system were allowed to operate improperly, if warnings were ignored, or if compliance failure were overlooked, those in charge can still be held accountable under the law. So many people have asked why it took so long for these charges to materialize. The answer lies in the complexity of financial crime investigation. Unlike other offenses, these cases involve years of transaction data. Whole heap of account or layered account structures and extensive documentation. Investigators must follow money trails carefully. So this is not a case where them can just rush or whatever, it will collapse fast. Another factor that kept the public attention firmly on the matter is obviously the high-profile investor, which is Usain Bolt. That involvement not changed the law though. It only amplified the public demand for transparency and accountability. The case was no longer about private losses. It becomes a national conversation about trust in financial institutions. And now it even got deeper. A whole heap of people are going to check if their money are right, because when it involves the top of the chain, it's not a good look. Looking ahead, the upcoming court appearance should be viewed as a procedural step, not a final outcome. Y'all know how courting goes. This stage allows the charges to be formally addressed, legal teams to engage, and timelines to be established. So the legal process from here can take time, and it's important to remember that all defendants are entitled to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in court. And we already saw one of them come out and say them innocent. So we know which part that I go. There are several possible directions this case could take. It may proceed to a full trial where evidence is tested and witnesses were called. Additional charges an individual could emerge if future evidence is uncovered. And if it's a slam dunk, then asset recovery effort could be expanded. And you have to remember that recovery does not necessarily mean full repayment for investor. And we have seen this across the world in several financial fraud cases. So Usain Bolt must get back his money, probably not even get back half of it. Here's the crazy part about this though. As this matter continues through the court, the focus should remain on facts, evidence, and due process. The outcome of this case will not only determine the responsibility for what happened at SSL, but also send a message about accountability at the highest level of financial power. But for the mere fact that they were only given $1 million each bail, jail bail at that, think about that. If this was a ghetto youth, is a judge a decide a bail in there, which means him probably locked down for a few days. Now, to be clear, jail bail or station bail is legal under Jamaican law, but we don't know. Ghetto youth from inner city communities, the experience will be very different. So from the jump, they start to feed a long-standing perception that the justice system operates differently depending on who you are, where you come from, and the level of influence you carry. This is not about declaring guilt, it's about acknowledging reality. When high-profile, well-connected individuals are charged, history shows us that the process often moves slowly. Legal teams engage, procedural matters stretch out, and the public attention gradually fade. Over time, cases lost urgency in the public mind. Headlines disappear, and many people are left wondering whether accountability will even truly arrive. We have seen similar patterns before. One thing I know for sure though, justice I go forward. Similar to what I said in my previous videos, I say years ago, about a year and a half ago. And a lot of people bash me and say, oh, see what them are doing. I say, listen, it is going to take time. But for the mere fact that they brought in international people, you think them bring the people in here for waste them time? Or buy them out? The people are not depend that them forward for work. It's only a matter of time. But right now, obviously them finalize on something, because when you pick up the big boss, you better be careful. Make sure the evidence are there. Me only hope so them not allow this man to stretch endlessly and real consequences not get to materialize. So what's next? On January the 26th, court date will be a key milestone as the prosecution begins to lay out the case against the former SSL leadership. So if you are new, of course, subscribe, because I'm sure you would want to hear the update. Meanwhile, the victims, both small and large investors have been seeking redress, and there have been efforts to partially compensate them through a court-supervised compensation fund. And like I said, most people would only get back a 2 pence of their money. Until then, big up on yourself. See you on the next one. Peace.